Hi folks, and welcome to another episode of the Yorkshire EV Club channel YouTube thing, for want of a better word. And today we are having one of the group admins and also a gentleman who looks after the website and does a fantastic job, and especially given what I pay him. It's Mr. Jon Gibbins.
Evening. How you doing, Darren?
Evening, John. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's I'm all right. What else can I say, really? Just keeping on as you do.
Good. And I think tonight, John likes to tell everyone that he's the member of the club who doesn't have an EV. He has a dirty self-charging hybrid, but it's a cracking little car. Tell us about your car, because they're relatively rare.
My car's a mild hybrid. It's a Honda Insight, second revision or edition 2, whatever you want to call it. I think it just sort of came about where I needed a car. In short, the car I had was without just a brief history of time, I had a VW Polo which got ruined after the floods of 2008. Moved on to a Peugeot 306 Estate, and I loved that thing. It was brilliant, but the engine in it was absolutely dreadful. It was a diesel, and just eventually, apparently it was a renowned problem. They just wear themselves out, and you can't get them back to life. I had a Skoda Superb after that, superb by name, superb by nature, but had a leak, and I just ended up buying so many cars and having no luck with them. And I thought, well, stuff it. I'll go to a main dealer and see what they've got. And lo and behold, my local Honda dealer in Hessel, the edge of Hull, just had a few cars outside, and I thought, well, that looks nice. Not seen one of those before. And it was a Honda Insight. It was blue, which was half the reason I bought it. But also the fact that it was a hybrid, and it was my first dabble into EVs and all that kind of thing. But the short of it is, I really just needed a car, and I think I just got really lucky in picking it, really, because I even tell my wife it's the best car so far that I've bought. I paid a little bit more than I did every other car I've bought, but I tell you what, for $7,500, I got myself a great car with something like 6,000 miles on the clock, and I'm still driving it today. And I bought it about 5 years ago. So what else can I say, really? It just happened to be the right car at the right time, and I love it. And it's also introduced me in part to electrified vehicles.
So how you say you've had that 5 years now, John?
I think so, yeah. I started a new job about 4 years ago, and I bought it just before then. So it must be 2015, maybe 2016 I got it. But still going. And the only problems I've ever had was a flat battery and a flat tyre. And that's the flat 12-volt battery, not the actual driving battery. So.
And some kind gentleman ran into it when it was parked, if I recall.
Well, but I'd like to say that wasn't my fault.
Yeah, it was. It definitely wasn't your fault.
Never leave a car that you're fond of in a very tight car park in Scarborough. It's lovely Scarborough, but I chose the wrong car park to put my car in. And let's just say there was an idiot white van on the other side of the car park. It obviously decided to reverse out, clip the back of my car, and disappear. But the car itself has been absolutely fine. It's just other people. I can't,
Well,
I can't control.
You're a little bit like me, aren't you, really? In that you're a gamer. You're very much a gamer, more of a retro gamer than me, perhaps. But one of the things I like about the car, I know, is the gamification of your eco miles.
Yeah. I'd never had a car like that before. Yeah, it's obviously it's part of the whole Insight thing. Is that the car is meant to be less polluting and that kind of thing, and more economical, and it gives you I guess like a lot of modern cars do now, it gives you like a rating out of 10 how economical your driving is. And as you're driving along, it sort of plants trees on the little dashboard. I say dashboard, it's a little 3-inch square dash in the middle of all the readings, but it's it literally plants a tree as you drive along, and as you stick your foot down to accelerate on the motorway, a tree disappears and that kind of thing. But it's it turns into a little challenge that if you're doing a lot of city driving, you can safely and reasonably drive while still keeping a good 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 efficiency, which is quite nice. So it turns into a bit of a game. But at the end of the day, without realising it, is that the more you think about it, the more you then do it without thinking. So it just makes you I think anyway, a better driver anyway, or a more economical driver. So yeah, it's got nice little quirks, to be fair. It's a 2010 model, so it's not got everything, but it's just something I've never seen in a car before.
Nissan Leaf drivers have a similar thing. They have a little tree, and it grows as you use your energy. Yeah, it's. Don't think it works quite the same way that the Insight one does. But speaking of games, John, I think you were the person who introduced me to Formula E. Even though I was an EV driver, I wasn't really a big racing fan, as it were. And you introduced me to Formula E, and that's getting very good, isn't it?
Yeah, I apologise for introducing you to that. I am the motorsport fan, for those obviously who've never heard of me before in the club. And yeah, big motorsport fan, Formula One, British touring cars, that kind of thing. You know, I'll always watch them. Lucky enough to go see a Formula One race in 2010, which was absolutely wonderful. It was brilliant just seeing cars in the flesh. So anyway, a new racing series comes along 6 years ago called Formula E. And I've been kind of following it, you know, in the build-up before they started the first race. And it was just all an idea and a concept. And before you know it, that they're sat in Hong Kong. Was it Hong Kong or somewhere in China? It was either Hong Kong or mainland China. But anyway, they had a race, a full city race. They literally blocked off half the city, grandstands everywhere, and a proper city street race with these Formula E cars. And they're basically, if you imagine little baby Formula One cars in appearance, obviously in performance as well at that time. And you just ended up with 24 cars going round a Chinese city. And it was brilliant, to be fair. It was really good in that if you're a racing fan, you're going to like the racing anyway. It's a bit like Formula One, so it's the same kind of respect. Same in that respect. But the most wonderful thing was at the time, I'm just trying to think when this was this 2014, I think, the first race? This is really terrible. I should know all this. But in the first set of races and the first generation of cars, obviously the batteries were only of a certain size. So you'd be driving around for, I don't know what it was, 20 laps, call it 20 laps. Then you'd have to go into the pit lane, park your car, jump out, jump into another car, which had a battery fully charged, ready and waiting. And then you'd shoot out again and do the second half of the race in your car. And as ridiculous as it sounds, and as much as all the Formula One fans were taking the mick out of it, left, right and centre, it was fantastic because, yes, okay, it was a little bit cheap. They sort of half-built the cars, you know, with half a battery before they could. Anyway, Formula One fans thought it was ridiculous, but it added loads of extra strategy to the race. You know, if you go too early or go too late, you go slower on one car and faster, and it was brilliant. And I'm not a Mr. Strategist when it comes to anything like that, but it was brilliant because in the fact that it was electric cars, so it was putting the whole message out there that it is possible. But on the racing side, I think it was superb as well, because no other racing series that I watch, at least, has got the same thing where you jump out of your car and jump into another one halfway through the race. It was fantastic.
Didn't that also allow the electrification? It also allowed another new feature. Was it called Fan Boost?
Yes, Fan Boost was pretty. Again, it was another weird idea, which actually works really well. Fan Boost is you have your list of your drivers available. I think it opens a week before the race or something like that. I should really know all this, but I've been doing it for so long without thinking. I don't think anymore. But you can vote for your favourite driver, and the top 5 of your favourite drivers of all the votes get a fan boost. And it's basically an extra 5 seconds of extra power. They push a button, they get an extra, I think it was an extra 5 kilowatts of power, so they can use it for like overtaking cars. Not too dissimilar to Formula One. You've got DRS, where you can open the back wing to reduce drag and your car will go faster. It was basically the same principle as that, but you've got one shot to use it. So if you're in second place and you're on the penultimate lap and you want to try and overtake, you can use your fan boost, or it's just mad, really. The rules are all mixed up, but it works
another element
perfect.
of strategy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of it, on the Generation 2 cars, which have been in their second season now, the second generation cars look the business. They look the future. They're wonderful. And if you don't know Formula E, it's worth going to have a look. The new cars look brilliant. But they've also added attack mode, which is there's a driver called Jean-Eric Verne. He's a French driver, and he's absolutely brilliant behind the steering wheel of these things. And he calls it Mario Kart, basically, because it's the idea where if you're going around a very wide track or a very wide piece of road, you can almost take, I don't know what you call it. It's like a lay-by, if you like. You drive through the lay-by, you hit 2 checkpoints and drive back onto the racetrack. And it's called attack mode. And it gives you 4 minutes of extra power. So basically, you drive past the little patch on the ground and you get extra boost. It's just like Mario Kart. But again, it's another bonkers little thing they've introduced.
People have thought about that, haven't they? Yeah. People have thought about that. And it's that other element. And again, it brings in more strategy from the drivers. And it's just, I guess the fans will be speculating when's he going to use attack mode. Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah. You have to use it twice in every race. But when you use it, it's completely up to the drivers. So, yeah, I mean, I'm granted all these things that I'm so enthusiastic about are not necessarily about the whole EV side of the thing and the electric vehicles, but the fact that it's just different. It's very different. And instead of trying to copy Formula One and have the same kind of racing there, they've just thought, well, let's just make everything up. Okay, we haven't got petrol cars, we've got electric. What else are we going to make different? And they've just piled it all on. And it's brilliant in that respect because it just works. It actually works.
And I would imagine that the diehard Formula One fans, some of them at least, will have been saying, well, it doesn't sound the same without an engine. But I've watched Formula E and I love the whine of the motors.
Although that's the thing. There will always be people that are used to what they're hearing. I mean, in 2010, it was the last of the turbo era on the Formula One engines, and they were loud. I mean, really loud. If you were close enough, really, you could probably do with wearing ear defenders. They were that loud. 2011, they went hybrid. So obviously battery assisted, a bit like the car I'm driving now. You regen and then you push and it gives extra power. And those engines are nowhere near as loud. They're half the volume. And Formula E is another step down in the volume. But the brilliance of that is that you can't hear the engines screaming. You can hear the whining of all the gears in the car going round and also the tyres screaming as they're going round corners. So it just sort of makes you aware of other noises that you never hear because it's just been always drowned out by the engines. But yes, that is the typical first thing that people notice when they're watching the Formula E racing. If they've never seen a Formula E before, what's that noise? What's that whining? It just sounds really weird. But that's exactly what they sound like. But you get used to it literally within 10 minutes. It's great.
It's growing year on year, isn't it? It's Formula E is getting bigger and bigger year on year, and it's attracting some good names, isn't it now as well? Yes,
they've just finished Series 6 or Season 6, whatever you want to call it, and it's not full of, but there are lots of former Formula One drivers because obviously Formula One is ridiculously competitive, and they will have a driver for a few years and out the door, gone. That's it. Just no more Formula One career, gone, just like that. So a lot of people have gone from Formula One to Formula E as a logical step. Jean-Eric Vergne used to drive for Toro Rosso, and he was devastated, absolutely devastated, because he thought he was doing really well. Anyway, he's jumped to Formula E. I'll throw a few names for those that know Formula One, but Stoffel Van Dorn used to drive for McLaren. He now drives for the new Mercedes team, which are new this year. Who else have we got? There's Antonio Felix da Costa, who's the current champion. He was a test driver for a Formula One team. I could just throw loads of names. Felipe Massa, he's driven for everybody in Formula One pretty much. He's brilliant. And he's now driving Venturi. So I would say that some people probably would accuse Formula E of just extending the life of old past it Formula One drivers. But I beg to disagree. Because there are less drivers really trying to pile into Formula E, everyone gets a fair shot, which means the best of the best of the best are climbing up to the top. And that's, you get people who learn their trade in Formula One, then go to Formula E. And because even though it's a brand new racing series, if you like, the racing knowledge is all up there. All they have to do is learn the car. They don't have to learn how to race anymore. So, it has been getting bigger every year. We're already on the second generation of cars, which are double the power. They don't have to stop halfway and change cars. They can do an entire race on one battery, which is 45 minutes plus 1 lap. I don't know, what else can I say? It's getting bigger and better. It's got all sorts going with it. You go to a Formula E event. Stop me if I'm rambling, but as you can see, I'm quite enthusiastic about all this. But you go to a Formula E race, and they've got the whole... Formula E village with it. So they've got, they call it the Allianz E village, which is you know, there's obviously the whole advertising from Allianz, that kind of thing, but you've got the simulators, you get to race against real racing drivers and that kind of thing. You've got the shops, the cafes and whatnot. And they've got like a party, and EJ is the official name of the Formula E DJ who's there,
Oh,
who
that's
on the
brilliant.
side also does loads of dance podcasts and all sorts, but he's really good. But it's a day out, or a weekend out. If you go for the full weekend, you can bring kids. It's kid friendly. They've done really well to try and push the electric vehicle message, I think, to younger kids, because you don't have to be over 16 to turn up. You don't have to worry about ear defenders or being in the wrong place. It's just a family event. Unfortunately, I was meant to go to London this year. Got really excited about it, and that never happened. So fingers crossed, maybe next year, eh? But there's so much that goes on during the Formula E race. It's not just a race and go home. It's a whole day, which is nice.
I guess it would be remiss of me not to mention, given the fact I've had a few I-Pace drivers that I've interviewed, and hello, Gary, if you're watching, I know you do. And they have an I-Pace race, don't they, before the main event?
Yes, the support races started last year. Yes, the Jaguar I-Pace. For my sins, I've not seen many of them because they've not really been available to watch, so to speak. I think it was a support race if you're there, and then they'll say, oh, by the way, so-and-so won the support race, but you never really got to see it until this year. Both Formula E, the actual organisation, and BBC this year have done a really good job. Formula E do all of their own video work, and they've now started showing the support races as part of their broadcast. And obviously the BBC are carrying that this year on Red Button and whatnot, or they were until last week because it just finished now. But yeah, between them all, it's really good because they don't show you the whole race, but they do show you the highlights of the I-Pace races. And they are big cars. You don't realise how big they are until you see about 4 of them all trying to fight and get past each other. But yeah, there's quite a few British races in there as well. So that's always another reason to get interested, really. But yeah, the I-Pace races have been doing really well. And I think they should be making more of a fuss about it, really. There's more than just
maybe have their own programme for sure. So here's the $1 million question, John, that's probably going to get the comments attacking me a little bit. But how long before Formula E overtakes Formula One?
That was the original question, I think, that got asked when they first started. It's a weird one because I don't think it will, but that's not because one's bigger or better than the other. I think Formula E is too different. Formula One is the pinnacle of the fastest cars in motorsport. Formula E is the fastest electric cars in motorsport currently. Well, I say currently because there are not many faster than that, but I think it's a different kind of race and it's a different kind of environment because I think that it's inevitable, whether it be 5 years or 25 years, petrol's going to run out and no one's going to be able to run a Formula One car without spending, I don't know, $1 million on a tank of fuel. But I don't know. I think it's one of these things that loads of people have asked, but nobody really knows. I don't actually think it's ever going to replace Formula E, but I think that Formula One probably will go electric at some point. But Formula One is the fastest. Formula E is the most electric, if that's the right comparison to make. They're racing series, but I don't necessarily think they're in competition with each other.
No.
So, yeah, I'm going to give a very lazy answer and say I don't think it will.
No, at least not.
Who knows?
Yeah. Do you think that Formula E is doing what Formula One does and helping to inform? I kind of already partly know the answer to this, but do you think it's helping to inform manufacturers about the properties of batteries when they've been pushed to their?
Oh yes, yeah, massively, totally. I mean the first set of batteries in the first generation of cars Formula E cars were built by Williams. Obviously, it's the same group of companies, the Williams Formula One team. But for those that don't know, Williams do all sorts. They are an engineering company, really, and the Formula One side is like a siphon of money between the two companies to keep each other going. But no, Williams had the first battery, and in the second generation of cars, McLaren have supplied the batteries. Now, put it like this: Williams managed to make a battery that could drive at, I don't know, it must have been about 150 kilometers an hour, flat out for must have been 15, 20 minutes on one battery. And you think just 5 years down the line, battery technology has literally doubled. And McLaren, who built these second generation of batteries, so managed to do an entire race, like 45 minutes flat out on one battery. I mean, to push these cars at, I think they go up to something like 250 odd kilometers an hour now. It's ridiculous. I don't think you're going to be able to do that on a packet of Duracells from the supermarket, are you? So, I mean, battery technology has already doubled, which kind of means that the technology in size is halved. So the batteries in the cars, obviously, logically, are going to shrink. McLaren make cars. Williams race cars. They are the perfect companies to try and work on battery technology, which obviously it's feeding car manufacturers. Perhaps maybe the hybrids are going to try and drain out the last of the stock of the batteries that are there. But when all that runs dry, I think there's no reason why people can't say, oh, if I want to do 90 mile an hour on the motorway and break the speed limit and go mental down the A1 3 times a day and not have to recharge, so be it, you can have it. But if you want a city drive and have your car last for 2 or 3 weeks without a charge, that's probably also going to tick that box as well.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing for me, though, the biggest point for me is that as of this year, we have so many car manufacturers. We've had Renault, who have they're in partnership with Nissan. Nissan now hold that driving license. So Renault, Nissan. We've got Venturi. We've got Neo. Virgin, although they don't make they're not manufacturers of cars. You've got Mercedes. You've got Porsche, and they're all, apart from 2 teams, big name manufacturers of automobiles, not just racing teams. So I think a lot of these car companies are pretty savvy, and they are using the racing to learn more about the efficiencies and economies in that kind of thing. So, yeah, I would say, short answer, yes, absolutely. They are. Formula E is feeding the automotive industry with lots of information. It's just trying to find an adequately big enough package where they can just go, bang, there's a car full of everything we've learned over the last 10 years, if that's how long it takes.
The example I give people, especially now, is that the way how fast the technology is moving is, prime example, I've just picked up just a week ago my ZE50, and my wife Julie's got a 2013 ZE22, and we both travelled to pick the car up and we both travelled back, and whereas Julie had to charge 2.5 times on the way home, I'm following in a ZE50, which is exactly the same size of car, exactly the same floor plan. She's got a 22 kilowatt battery and I've got a 52 kilowatt battery. And all of that in the same car within 7 years.
It's not bad, is it? I think that's the thing. The batteries are the key thing, I think, that are obviously being worked on, not only by the car manufacturers, but by McLaren and Williams and all sorts, really. It's amazing.
But I guess it's like anything, isn't it? It's not just about the hardware, the battery management system, the software. That will be getting cleverer. I mean, a Renault in this version, the ZE50, unlike the other two, this is introduced a B mode, which you didn't have with the other two, the 22 or the 40 kilowatt Zoes. So now they've recognised the need for energy capture, and that'll allow that even bigger battery to last even longer. I mean, I've been to Stoke this weekend, and whereas range anxiety used to really be a thing with me, with this car, I know I've got 200 miles easily, and it's a no-brainer.
You're winning on both sides, aren't you? You're winning on both sides in that the battery technology is getting bigger, and the regen technology is getting bigger as well. So you've got double the win, you've got double the space to store the power, and then you've got double the input going back into the battery as well. So in effect, I imagine you're probably getting more than 50% performance from a 50% bigger battery.
Yeah, and it's, when you know how to drive a car, when to use your regen and it holds the mileage really well. And I mean, sometimes even in Julie's older car, I can do 5 miles and only use 3 in actual energy because of the terrain and what have you. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, this is the thing with petrol cars that you don't notice as much. Obviously, when you've got a tank full of liquid in the back of your car, you've got that much carrying with you. You don't really notice the difference between a tank lasting, say, 200 miles and 250 miles, because it's such a long time since you last refilled anyway. Obviously, batteries at the moment, in theory, so obviously there's different ways of thinking, but yeah, in theory, you've got to charge more often than you would put petrol in your car. But at the same time, it's because you are more aware that you're carrying less portable energy or stored energy, if you like, it makes you a better driver, because you are aware that if you stamp your foot on the floor, you're going to drain your battery in double the time. So, yeah, I mean, having less power with you makes you a better driver. Therefore, I'd say it's a win-win, because you're getting more economy out of your driving. And also, because of it, you're not really chewing up as much power, and then the environmental knock-on and all that kind of stuff. It all just leads one to another. So even if you've got a smaller battery, you kind of learn how to drive with it. And if you're happy with that, then it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then when you do go to a new car, it's an even easier ride for you.
There are several tricks you can employ. And I was saying to someone on Twitter earlier, you kind of get an instinctive feel for your car as well. And you know what you can push, and sometimes what you see on the screen, you can get more, especially if you know the terrain and you think, oh, there's a big hill there. I can recapture three or 4 miles easily. And, and some people coast, some people draft, some people use a combination of things. It's amazing how you can push it. It's really hard to run a car out, actually, unless you're really, really casual and you don't keep an eye on things.
Here's a question for you then. Pardon me. People living near the area around Hull and Hez and the rest of it, there's a dirty great hill that goes down towards Rudston Walk, which is not too far from the edge of the A63. Do you know where I'm on about?
Yeah, it's the south. I call it the South Cave one. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, towards South Cave. That's right. What do you do when you go down the hill? Do you just roll? Do you regen? Do you B mode? What do you do?
The truth of it is, it would depend on what car I had. I did different things with different models of car. With the Zoe, certainly Julie's Zoe or the 40 kilowatt Zoe I had, I would regen down that hill. I might coast for the first couple 100 yards, and then I would get the regen, and I'd get about 5 miles out of that hill.
It's great, 5 miles.
It's not so much
the really
hill; it's the gradient. I'd give an example. Just before I sold my ZE40, me and Julie went away to Stockport, and the terrain was like a roller coaster. And I literally, it was amazing. Although some of it was uphill, it was mostly downhill on the way going. And within about 10 miles, I must have used about 3. The terrain was so forgiving. I was getting so much regen. I wasn't using any energy. I'm like, all this travel, and it's like, it wasn't coming out the battery because I was just getting it all back at every opportunity. It was, and we found that in Scotland last year in our Leaf, when we had a Leaf. Sounds like I have a new car every 6 months. It feels like it at the moment. But we went to southwest Scotland, and there was a 75-mile stop before the charge. And I'm saying to Julie, I said, depending on the terrain, that could be tricky. But as it happened, it was single track, and it was mostly downhills with a few little uphills. So I kept regaining my energy, and it's like, you just don't see that with a petrol car. Yes, you could coast, but you don't get anything back. And the fact that you get something back.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I don't know what newer hybrids are like, but my insight, obviously being a very mild hybrid, it's I think Honda are the most honest, maybe, hybrid car manufacturer. They call it an IMA, which is an integrated motor assist, which is exactly what it does and exactly what it says on the tin. It's a motor assist, so it doesn't try and say, "Oh, I'm a battery car." But when you're coasting and you're, call it regen, it's not really, but yeah, when you're braking and that kind of thing, it does charge the battery into the battery in the petrol car. But it's not going to make you go any more distance, really, recharging the battery. It's just going to make your car more economical when starting off. And I think this is the big difference, I think, currently between the electric cars and the hybrids and petrol cars. And like I say, you can't regen on a petrol or diesel car. The mild hybrids will just really, it will top up the battery for your assist, but it won't necessarily push you any further. And this is one of the big things that electric cars have got over the traditional combustion engines, really. And I think that's great, because you think you've got 5 miles, but like you say, you can use only 3 miles worth of juice.
But also, no one's come out and said it, but every EV I've ever had, I know for a fact, has had a generous portion of all drivers are idiots, so we're going to give you a generous bit. When we say you've got nothing, we've really saved you 5 or 10%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think there's definitely a factor. I mean, I know they say you don't use all the battery because they save the top and bottom end to protect the battery with a lot of cars.
Yeah.
But I also know for a fact, from having run more than one car low, that they do give you a generous portion. When it says you've got an out, you've got something. You've probably got a few miles.
Well, that's the same equivalent of the petrol cars as well, which is good. It's good that they've done that. I mean, my insight, as soon as that orange light is on the dash, I know I've got 30 miles at motorway speeds to find a petrol station. And the fact that they've built that into a battery as well is brilliant, because, like you say, it does protect the battery if you don't stick it all the way up to the top and all the way to the bottom. But also when it's code brown and you think you're about to break down, having that extra little comfort blanket in comparison to a petrol car, I'm glad they've done it, because you're kind of used to it, really.
Almost every EV driver whinges about there not being enough infrastructure, and I just think back to 2015. I think we're doing very well compared to when I first started driving EVs. But it's a case of I know if I'm near a major city, there's going to be somewhere I can plug in, even if it's a slow rate. Within 10 miles of a major city, I never panic anymore. As long as there's a slow charger somewhere, and if I have to wait an hour, it's better than running out completely in a stretch of road in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you're stuck, but you're not going to be stuck forever. If your car's run out of petrol, that's it. You can't get any more petrol, you're stuffed. But yeah, you plug it in anywhere. You knock on someone's door, say, "Can I give you a £5 and just borrow some electricity, please?"
If you've got a granny charger,
you're able to do that.
Yeah. It's for that reason I used to keep a 30-meter extension in the back of my old Leaf, but I don't anymore because I've never needed it.
Good. I guess that was your comfort blanket at the time. If you're a new EV driver, it's something to make you feel more confident when you're driving. Whereas if you're driving and you haven't got it, paranoia levels get a bit higher, and you realise you don't need it. Then you've learned from it, really.
It came in handy when me and Julie would stop at a lodge or something in the middle of nowhere, and I just need to sort of plug in 2 or 3 pin sockets, so I just needed something to give me distance from the car park. But
at the same time, though, that's an opportunistic charge, isn't it? It's not necessarily that you would have needed it there and then, but
no, that's right.
There's a plug there, and there's a car there. If you're able to use it,
but this is it, and people think that it's inconvenient plugging in. It takes a second, and you can do it anywhere, and that's the beauty of EVs. I've not been to a petrol station for months.
I was about to say that the best thing that I hear about EV drivers is that I don't have to drive to a petrol station anymore because it's charged on my driveway. I don't have to go anywhere to fill it up. I can just fill it up here, which is it's a whole different mindset, isn't it? You don't have to rely on petrol stations. You rely on.
When was the last time a petrol station gave you petrol for free?
Yeah.
I didn't need a charge today, but as it happened, we stopped at M18 services for a quick pee and a quick look in the Moxies, because sometimes they have a nice little Sunday deal on, and it was on free vend. So I got 80-90 miles for absolutely nothing. So that's going to pay for my driving this week.
Brilliant.
I didn't need the range, but it was there. It was free. No one was queuing, and I'd let them on if they had.
But at the same time, that's one of the things that could potentially lure people in. I mean, obviously, we all know it's not going to last forever, all this free charging. But if you say, I don't know, someone's bought a Leaf for the second car in the family, or the child's car, something like that. Teenagers, whatever. It's an knowing that you can charge opportunistically anywhere is going to be a bonus, because you think, oh, I've got a free charge here. You know, everyone likes a freebie, and that is to me, I think, one of the things that's going to probably pull a few more people to EVs. Once people get over the whole phobia of electric vehicles, it's going to be one of these things. Oh yeah, I'm charged for free. I'll have an electric one, thank you. As opposed to, like you say, no petrol stations ever given away fuel free.
Once people cotton on, the infrastructure will definitely need to up its game then, because there isn't enough. There isn't enough for the masses. So I'm hoping it exponentially does improve, because we're going to need it too.
I think that's probably a result of the whole chicken egg thing, isn't it? Where people are not going to buy electric cars if they can't find chargers, but then they're not going to build chargers if no one's buying the cars to use on them. So, but I think once that initial instability kicks in and people go, oh, we need more cars or we need more chargers, I can see it happening. But it's just gradual, isn't it? I think that's the thing, where if someone builds a petrol station, it's there. You've got all the petrol in the world, metaphorically. I'm sure that's probably a really bad choice of words, but you know what I mean. But you can fuel 150 cars in a day, if not more, from a petrol station, whereas from a charger you can't. But if there are going to be more electric cars and you actually see people queuing to use chargers, that's going to be the incentive we could be earning another quick buck here, selling more electricity to chargers. So
and businesses aren't daft either. They know that. In fact, if you stop at Tip Shelf Services on the M1, in fact, a lot of services, they've got their roofs full of solar panels. And a lot of these charging providers, again, using battery packs and panels, some of them are going to start to be grabbing their energy for free and charging to dish it out. So that's a bit of a no-brainer once you've got the infrastructure in place.
Exactly, yeah. You've got to pay for the infrastructure somehow, but if someone's managed to put a point there, you don't really mind that. They've spent all their money putting a charger there. I don't care if they're making a greasy profit off my off my charge. At the end of the day, they've supplied you with the service, and that's what you're paying for.
Exactly, yeah. And
you're paying for the service, not just for the electricity.
And this is it. And it's it's, and everyone's willing to pay for it. It's just that at the moment, these are the halcyon days, the salad days, where the likes of me can look at my Octopus app and see, oh, they're going to pay me to charge at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. So happy days. We are getting using certain tariffs and stuff, we are getting a little bit of free energy. It's great.
And that's another thing, isn't it? Really, and that's another massive conversation, maybe for another day. But if the grid wants to get rid of power, there you go. That is your reason for driving an electric car.
Yeah, because vehicle to grid is going to be a massive support of the grid. Yeah, vehicle to grid and schemes like that. Once they reach some decent numbers. I know there's been a lot trialled over the last few years, but that's going to save the need for a lot of power stations and what have you, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too clued up on the whole car to grid business. I understand obviously what it means, but as to the why, I don't really know. But I think the point is there are so many naysayers saying, oh, the grid can't cope, and this comes around at least once a year on some newspaper or another, saying, oh, EVs, with a seducing headline, are they bad for the environment? Are they as good as they claim to be? Well, at the end of the day, when it comes to the power grid have basically said, as far as I'm aware, bring it on, because
the technology's there.
Stabilise the whole grid.
The technology's there. It's not been mass adopted yet, but the idea being that you plug your car in at night in a vehicle to grid system, and the grid will say, right, we'll draw from this when we need the power, and we'll give it you back at a reduced rate, and we'll pay you a little bit of money for the privilege. And if you've got 1 million cars with all of that energy available, you could solve a lot of your problems with no extra cost, provided you've got a bit of software controlling it, at the house end.
That's a given. But even so, I mean, the idea of it is great though, because even it's all the problems solved. I mean, it's a bit like when they say but I think it was back at the end of the 80s or beginning of the 90s, there was a thing, I don't know why I remember it, but they were basically saying at the end of Coronation Street, when that finishes, power stations have to you know, just spark up all these hundreds of thousands of turbines, whether it be water powered or steam powered or whatever. I think it was on one of these "How do they do that" programs. But anyway, they have to do so much effort just to boost the grid to avoid brownouts and that kind of thing.
Because everyone's going to make a brew after Coronation Street. Yeah.
Exactly. But if all the cars sitting on the network spread over the cars can just, I don't know, spend 2 or 3% of their electric and then pull it back in later on, you're making the grid's job easier. It's a no-brainer. I think for every argument where one of these papers say, oh, EVs, oh, they're rubbish, they're not going to work, oh, it's a silly idea, there are about 3 counter-arguments for it. So even if, should it ever happen one day where someone comes up with a perfectly legitimate criticism, it's just weighing up your pros and cons, isn't it?
Well, the ones that frustrate me is where some idiot journalist gets a car for a week and then does a little vlog about how bad and how inconvenient it was, but yet they've done nothing, no research to prepare themselves for it, and they just present the negatives because that's the story they've been told to spin.
But also, at the end of the day, it goes back to, if you know you've got less power, you use it more economically and the rest of it. If he's used to driving a 2-litre diesel for the whole of his life, and then he sticks his foot down in a Nissan Leaf and the battery's disappeared within half an hour, well, he knows why. Because he's sat on a motorway doing 90 miles an hour non-stop, which...
Their big argument used to be price, didn't it? EVs are so expensive, and I'm afraid they haven't quite reached price parity, but we are at a stage where things are...
It's on the way, though, isn't it?
Cars are getting longer range. I'm paying the same for this car as I did for my last one with a bigger battery, and it's... Yes, it's... the arguments are disappearing and people are getting more interested, and it's they're interesting times for us.
Definitely. It's always improving. I mean, the same way that the petrol and diesel engines were always improving their economy and that kind of stuff and their clean credentials, EVs is going to do exactly the same, except one's been around for about 100 years, the other one's been around for about 10, 15. So give it time. I think that's what it will take.
Drawing it back to the Formula E, just before we finish, John, what do you think is going to be next for Formula E? What tricks have they got up their sleeve for next year? Any idea?
I think. You've got me on there. I don't really know.
There. I'm sorry, mate.
No, that's fine. Well, being the first generation of cars were all pretty much the same. They had the same cars in the first season. The second and third season, they were allowed to experiment with the aero and this, that, and the other, and the powertrains and that kind of thing. There are so many doors and avenues that you can explore in motor racing. So I would imagine, this is sheerly just my amateur guesswork really, but if not in the next season, maybe after, I think they're going to start allowing a bit of freedom in the aerodynamics of the car, because at the moment they all have the same shell, you see, but all the brakes and all the powertrains are all tuned and built by the manufacturers or the customer teams. So I think the next big change may well be in the aerodynamics, just because that's been the same for the whole.
Allow a bit more individuality of teams, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not just making your car look different with pretty colours and pictures and stripes and the rest of it. It's actually making the wings different, like Formula One do. They can change the wings and do what they like. I think that's probably going to be the next big thing on Formula E, I think.
Smashing.
Personally.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much for talking to me tonight, John.
That's all right. No, it's nice to finally be part of it, to be honest. It's been a while. It's
been great. Thanks for all your work on the website. You're doing brilliantly with that, and I'd urge anyone to check it out. Just search Yorkshire EV Club, you'll find us, no problem. I think the website comes up first on Google when you put that in, actually. So,
well, that's because we are the biggest Yorkshire EV Club, aren't we? Surely.
So, yeah, thanks ever so much, John, and you have a pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Speak to you soon. All the best. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.